The sound of a single teacup settling into its saucer was the loudest noise in the room. I sat at my own kitchen table, surrounded by the people I loved most, and realized I didn't know them at all. The family portrait on the wall behind them seemed to be mocking me. My hands were steady, but my heart was a frantic bird beating against its cage. Asterisk, how long asterisk, I thought, asterisk, have I been living in a story they wrote for me, asterisk. For most of my life, I believed we had built something unshakable. My husband, David, and I met young. We didn't have much money, but we had big dreams in a small apartment. We worked hard. He built his construction business from the ground up, and I managed the books while raising our 2 children, Mark and Lily. Our home was always full of noise, the clatter of Lego bricks, the smell of Saturday morning pancakes, the sound of David's tired but happy sigh when he walked through the door. As the years passed, our success grew. The small apartment became a comfortable, spacious house. The old sedan was replaced by newer, shinier cars. We were the perfect family in our social circle. David was the respected self-made man. I was the warm, organized heart of the home, the one who remembered every birthday and hosted every holiday. But looking back, I can see the first hairline cracks. The subtle shift in David's priorities, from building a life to building a legacy. The way he'd talk about protecting our assets and estate planning with a new, sharp-edged seriousness. Our son, Mark, joined the business straight out of college, and I'd often hear them talking in low, intense voices in the home office. They'd fall silent when I entered the room, offering me warm, practiced smiles. "Just boring business talk, Sarah," David would say. I thought it was their special bond, a father-son thing. I never imagined I was the one being managed, kept in the gentle dark. The trigger wasn't a dramatic fight. It was a quiet, administrative task. We were refinancing the house, and the bank needed some old financial documents. David was away on a business trip with Mark, and he'd asked me to find a specific file in his office. His desk was a landscape of organized chaos. I found the file easily, but as I pulled it out, a smaller, sleeker black folder I'd never seen before slipped out from behind it and fell to the floor. Papers fanned out around my feet. I knelt to gather them, my eyes scanning automatically. They were legal documents. At the top of one, the words prenuptial agreement were stamped. That was odd, we'd never had one. Then I saw my name. Anne Davids. And a date from just 2 years ago. My breath caught. I shuffled through the other pages. There was a trust fund document. It listed our children as beneficiaries, which I expected. But it also listed David's brother, Steve, as the sole trustee. And then I saw it. The document referred to another, larger trust, one that held the majority of our assets, the business, the investment portfolios, even a majority ownership of our home. A trust one was not part of. A trust one had never agreed to. A trust that, according to the date, was created the same month I had taken a step back from the business books, a decision David had gently encouraged. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. The man I had shared a bed with for 30 years had quietly, legally, boxed me out of the life we had built together. I didn't confront him. Not then. A cold, quiet clarity settled over me. I carefully placed everything back exactly as it was. But now, I started to see the pattern everywhere. A week later, I overheard Mark on the phone. Don't worry, Dad has it all under control. Mom is taken care of, but the real assets are protected. It's just smarter this way. He wasn't being malicious, he was stating a fact, a plan he was fully aware of. I began to feel like a guest in my own life. Conversations about money, once open, were now redirected. You don't need to worry about that, dear, David would say, patting my hand. The pat felt condescending, not comforting. I felt the walls of my beautiful home closing in. It was no longer a sanctuary. It was the prettiest room in my gilded cage. The loneliness was the heaviest burden. I'd sit in our large, quiet living room after David had gone to bed and trace the lines of our family photos. The smiles felt like lies. I started paying closer attention to our daily expenses. I noticed how David would subtly question small purchases, something he'd never done before. Do you really need another set of gardening shears, Sarah? It was a small thing, but it felt like a test, a reminder of my new, dependent position. The final, crushing blow came during a family dinner. Lily was talking about her friend's parents getting divorced. David chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. A messy business, he said, not looking at me. So many men get ruined because they didn't plan. They let sentiment get in the way of security. Mark nodded in agreement. In that moment, I wasn't his wife or their mother. I was a liability. I knew I couldn't live in this shadow any longer. I needed to know the full truth. While David and Mark were at a weekend conference, I went back to the office. This time, I wasn't looking for a stray folder. I was methodical. I checked the safe, using the combination I'd had for 20 years. It had been changed. That small, definitive lockout felt like a slap. I turned to his computer. He was meticulous with paper, but careless with digital passwords. I logged in and found a folder simply labeled Estate. Inside was the complete picture. The main family trust. The will that left me a modest monthly allowance, but gave control of everything else to David's brother, to oversee for the children's benefit. There were emails between David and Steve. Phrases jumped out at me. Can't risk Sarah's soft heart if the market turns. And need to ensure the business stays in the male line of the family. And the one that made my blood run cold. She'll be comfortable, but she'll never be able to dismantle what we've built. It wasn't just about money. It was about control. It was about a fundamental lack of faith in me. They saw my nurturing nature as a weakness, my love as a threat to their empire. The power balance in my mind shifted irrevocably. I was no longer the betrayed wife. I was an opponent who had just discovered the blueprint of her own cage. I was calm. I didn't cry. I made a cup of tea, sat at the kitchen table, and I planned. I knew a dramatic, emotional confrontation would only make them circle the wagons. They saw emotion as a flaw. I would have to use their own language, logic, strategy, and the law. I reached out to an old friend, a sharp, discreet lawyer named Evelyn whom I'd known since before I was married. I met her in her office, laid out everything I'd found. She listened, her face a mask of professional calm, but I saw the anger in her eyes. This is coercive, Sarah, she said. A secret trust like this, created without your knowledge, especially in a community property state, is highly questionable. My plan was not about revenge. It was about restoration. It was about reclaiming my legal and moral share of the life I had helped create. Evelyn helped me understand my rights. We decided my best move was not to attack the trust directly at first, but to assert my power in a different way. I began quietly gathering documents, old tax returns I had signed, records of my early work in the business, proof that every asset was built with our shared effort. I opened a separate bank account in my name only and started putting aside a small amount of money from the household account, a necessary step for independence. I was calm. I was composed. I continued making David's favorite meals and listening to Mark's stories about work. But inside, I was a general preparing for a battle they didn't know was coming. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday. David, Mark, and Steve were all in our living room, looking over some business papers. I walked in and placed a single document on the coffee table in front of them. It was a formal letter from my lawyer, Evelyn. I won't be signing the refinancing papers for the house, I said, my voice even and quiet. David looked up, annoyed. Sarah, not now. This is important. We need to sign them by Friday. I know, I said. But I won't be signing. You should read that. Steve picked up the letter. His face paled as he read. It stated that I was aware of the S&L Family Trust, created without my knowledge or consent. It outlined that I was contesting its validity and filing for legal separation of our assets, which would immediately freeze all major accounts pending a review. The room was utterly silent. Mark looked confused. Steve looked panicked. David stared at me, and for the first time in our marriage, I saw not anger, but fear. What is this, Sarah? David finally stammered. It's me refusing to live in your secret, I said, still calm. It's me claiming my half of the life we built together. You thought you could protect your assets from me. You forgot they were our assets. You forgot I was the one who helped you build them. The power in the room had completely shifted. It wasn't a shouting match. It was a quiet, devastating realization on their part that the person they had underestimated knew everything and was no longer asking, but telling. The legal process was long, but my case was strong. The secret trust was dissolved. The assets were rightfully split. David and I did not divorce, but our marriage is different now. It is a choice, not a cage. We live separately, but meet for coffee. We are learning, slowly and painfully, how to speak to each other as equals again. Mark eventually apologized, realizing he had been led down a path of misguided practicality. Our relationship is tender, but healing. I learned that a family's strength isn't in its perfect facade, but in its willingness to be honest, even when it's hard. I learned that my quiet strength was far more powerful than their loud plans. The greatest revenge wasn't taking everything. It was reclaiming myself and offering them the chance to do better. The foundation of a family isn't the house you live in, but the truth you live by. If this real-life story resonated with you, please share your own thoughts in the comments below. For more calm, reflective stories about navigating life's difficult moments, like and subscribe. Thank you for listening.